everyone, it's Sky from Arthritis to Athlete here, and before we jump into today's video, I want to ask you a quick question. Have you ever been in a conversation and somebody says something kind of like this?
Yo dude, I heard this one internet study and it said drinking dish detergent is like totally healthy, man.
No? Are you sure that's not just some crazy exaggerated headline or something?
Yeah man, there's really a study. I saw it with my own two bro eyes.
Did you even read the study?
Well, no, but...
Oh gosh. Do you even know how the study was done?
Bro, that doesn't even matter. Like, I saw it on the internet and that's where I get all my information from bros like myself.
I don't know about you, but I have found myself in situations kind of like that way more often than I feel comfortable with. Now I understand it can be sort of fun to kind of poke fun at these things every once in a while.
So if you adopt a vegetarian or vegan diet to become healthier, it's not going to happen because there's so many nutrient deficiencies you're going to develop.
So many nutrient deficiencies.
But this is a serious problem. I mean, we live in a very retweet activism-centered type of world, and that can lead to a lot of people being uneducated or just simply uninformed about really important factors like their health.
Honestly, potatoes aren't very good for you.
Bacon and eggs for breakfast is okay.
I don't eat fruits because fruits is sugar.
Fruits is sugar. Fruits is sugar.
It affects a lot of other things as well. But as you may know, health and nutrition is a particularly conflicted field. For every one study that says blank thing is good, there's obviously going to be another study saying blank thing is bad. How do you sort out the noise and the garbage from the good stuff? That's what today's video is going to be about. Because, let's be honest, there is a lot of garbage research out there in nutrition, and you have to be able to look out for it. Now, just a quick disclaimer before we get into this. I am not a medical doctor, and I'm not a research analyst, so I'm not going to be giving really in-depth tips about things I probably am not super educated about. But that being said, I do have quite a bit of experience being able to understand scientific studies and parse out what they're actually saying. So in this video, I'm going to be giving some basic tips about how to understand what you're reading, as well as some potential red flags to look out for. Alright, and with that, I think this intro is getting way too long, so let's jump right into it. Roll the intro. So since I'm going to be giving some tips about how to understand research in this video, I thought it would be kind of fun to use an actual example. It's actually this study. It's a randomized control trial, which is the gold standard of research, really clearly demonstrating that parachute use does not decrease your risk of major injury or death. Crazy, right? So that's it, right? We might as well just go jump out of airplanes without parachutes now, right? Let's go. Wait, hold on a second. Here's the catch. The researchers didn't have people jumping out of a flying plane. They had people jumping out of a completely stationary plane on the ground. You can't make this stuff up, man. Well, actually you can, because obviously these researchers did. Okay, obviously this is a total joke study, but it was actually done with the intent of showing people how easy it is to manipulate even the gold standard of research. That actually leads me to my first tip about how to interpret research. Don't just read the introduction and the conclusion and call it good there. That's how people get misled. And while this might seem like common sense, it's really not. Like you saw that little skit in the beginning of the video, most people are just gonna see a headline, absorb what it says, and then take that as gospel for basically the rest of their life. It doesn't matter how the study was done, it doesn't matter what it applies to, it doesn't even matter if it's totally wrong. They're just gonna believe it. Don't, and hear me out on this, don't be that person. That just makes you like everybody else and more part of the problem and less part of the solution. But you might tell yourself, dude, I don't know how to read scientific literature. All those big words just confuse the heck out of me. And I wouldn't call you dumb for saying something like that. But don't let this scare you away. As always, whenever you're dealing with things that are slightly unfamiliar to you, simplify, simplify, and simplify. Look up some definitions to words you might not know sometimes, and just try to get to the root of what the researchers are trying to say. It's actually a lot easier than you might think most of the time. Here, let me show you a quick example from the parachute study. I find this totally hilarious, actually. This is an actual quote from the parachute study that I kind of just glossed over the first time I read it, but then I went back and read it again, and I was like, wait, did they really just write that? Here's the quote. Owing to the difficulty in enrolling patients at several thousand meters above the ground, we expanded our approach to include screening members of the investigative team, friends, and family. So, let's simplify here. They were basically just like, excuse me, my kind sir. Would you be willing to jump out of this plane in which you are currently sitting without a parachute, almost resulting in certain death? What? What? No! Who are you, dude? Oh, fiddlesticks! Hey, mother, would you be willing to jump out of a plane for me?
Oh, honey, I don't know. That sounds really dangerous.
But mother, it's for science!
Oh, well, why didn't you just say so, honey? But you have to buy me dinner afterwards.
Yeah, so go figure. Reading between the lines can be kind of important sometimes. Okay, our next tip is debatably one of the most important ones, and that's gonna be looking at the methods of the research. In other words, how did they do it? There's a lot of different ways to test kind of the same thing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can kind of get a result that doesn't mean anything. And on the other hand, if you do know what you're doing in designing the study, you can design a study in such a way to, even if it's done perfectly, the methods make it so it's very misleading. In the parachute study, this is pretty simple. I mean, they just didn't include people who weren't willing to jump out of a flying plane without a parachute, which, go figure, happens to be all of them. So they had to turn to different methods. So they had friends and family and other investigators jump out of a plane that was totally grounded. I mean, that research means nothing now. Now, to be fair, in real research, things like that are going to be a little harder to parse out, but still very doable. Let me show you an example with a study that's often cited by cholesterol deniers. I actually went over this study in a previous video of mine, so I'm just going to cut to that clip. Check it out. So we know very well that eating cholesterol increases blood cholesterol after a meal. But in the study often cited, they only measured fasting cholesterol the morning after, many hours after the meal had already passed. Of course, you wouldn't see a significant difference because after that amount of time, your cholesterol levels would drop back down to about the same as where they started. Pretty tricky, right? See what I mean? If you didn't read exactly how the researchers conducted the research, then that would be really, really easy to look at that and be like, wow, I guess cholesterol doesn't matter. But as we all know, that's just simply not the case. Now, let me take this one step further and show you how an average Joe like me can totally design a study that's very valid, but totally misleading. Let's say I wanted to make a study in which cholesterol consumption over time doesn't increase heart attack risk. How would I do that? That seems like a pretty tough feat. Well, it's really not. Let me show you. I would follow a large population of, say 65 to 80-year-olds who had a typical meat-based diet, but were in otherwise good health and didn't have a history of any heart attacks or coronary events. Then I would follow their medical history until they died and see if they had any coronary events or heart attacks in that time. On the surface, that seems like a pretty fair study design, but I'll bet you that if I actually did that study, I wouldn't see any correlation between cholesterol and heart attacks, or at least it probably wouldn't be statistically significant. Let me show you why. There's a big glaring error here. You see, I chose to follow a population that was already pretty old and in good health without any history of heart attacks. With that type of study design, I would be screening out the huge number of people that had a heart attack or atherosclerosis before the time they were 65, which is a lot of people. By looking at the population that was already pretty old and hadn't had any heart attacks, I was probably looking at the people who were anomalies. They probably had crazy genetic resistance against heart disease. Maybe they had things for other diseases, but not for heart disease. Now you can start to see why the conclusion to this hypothetical study I made would be incredibly misleading, and it wouldn't apply to the general public at all. Now, unfortunately, this kind of thing happens way more often than you might think in nutrition research, especially in industry-funded research. So industry funding is another thing. It's a red flag you should look out for. Industry funding doesn't instantly mean that something's wrong, but it's gonna make it much more likely, and it's definitely a red flag. But that's exactly why it's so important to actually read the methods of the study and see how the researchers did it. Because, like in a lot of things, the devil is really in the details. Also, before we wrap things up, I just wanted to throw in one more funny quote from the parachute study. There's a lot of little gold nuggets like these speckled throughout there, but I just wanted to share one with you guys. This really got a chuckle out of me. It says, and I quote, "Although the use of softer endpoints, such as levels of fear before and after jumping, or its surrogates, such as loss of urinary continence could have yielded more power to detect an effective parachutes. Basically, let's just look if you peed your pants or not. That's probably a way better measure of how good parachutes actually are. Gosh. Oh, wow. Maybe you guys don't find that quite as funny as I do, but man, that got a good laugh out of me, and I just wanted to throw it in there. It's funny. Anyway, I'm kind of running out of time here, and I gotta wrap things up. But thank you so much for watching, especially if you stuck with me to the end. You're the real MVP. If you got any value out of this video, please consider adding value back to my channel by liking, commenting, and hitting that subscribe button, as well as the bell icon next to it. That really helps my channel out a bunch. Alrighty, and with that, I will see you guys very, very soon. And God bless.